Hello, hello, hello. This time we're going to have a quick look at Dinky number 665, the Honest John missile launcher. The Honest John was a battlefield missile introduced in the late 50s. It was capable of carrying a small nuclear warhead. It was introduced, of course, by the US Army, naturally. And Dinky produced the only die-cast model, apparently, that was ever been done of it. This had a very long life. It was introduced in 1964 and ran for 12 years, all the way to 1976. And it came out at a price of 19 shillings and 11 pence. As you can see, like all military vehicles, Dinky produced, or virtually all, at the time, it was produced in an olive drab. This was an adaptation of another model, actually. It was the chassis came from number 667, which is the missile servicing platform, which is basically the same thing. Which is basically the same thing, but they replaced this section with, it was like a crane that came with the, I think it was a Corporal missile they did, which was a very impressive model, very expensive one at the time. So that they basically reutilised the same chassis. So what about, just a little bit about the history first of all. The Honest John was a field artillery rocket. As I said, it could carry nuclear warhead, not necessarily nuclear, but it was introduced in the mid-50s. I think it was 1953, 54, and they were deployed to Europe as part of the Cold War against the Warsaw Pact, of course. So Germany would have had quite a lot of these things trundling around the country lanes, I would have thought. It was also capable of carrying chemical warheads as well, and I believe it had a range, I have read, about 12 miles. I think it was phased out of service in the early 70s by the Lance missile. It was eventually declared obsolete in the early 80s. I think it was 82, I think. So, but yeah, Dinky did this rather nice model of it. It's quite unusual, really. This one is a little bit battered. It was, of course, second-hand. It's not one that I had as a child. I think I bought it about, 10, 12 years ago, I think it was. It's a bit battered, but, you know, it was really cheap. I think it was less than a tenner, I think, including the missile, which is quite nice. Quite unusual. The missile itself, as you can see here, is fired on a launching ramp. It's quite an early one because it's got the checkerboard on it, and the tip itself is rubber. Mine's a little bit loose, unfortunately, but, you know. The missile itself, you could pivot it. So let's just take it off. Yeah, this fell off anyway, right. They're very so professional. So you can see, you can, there you go, look, you've got a slight traverse on it. I think it's 20 degrees, 10 degrees either side. And of course you could elevate it as well with the little piston thingy there. So you've got a slight degree of, you could angle it. All right, before I come on to the missile, let's just have a quick look at the body itself. It's nicely detailed. It's a very accurate model, really. You see one of these, if you watch Peter Watkins' rather controversial, well, not controversial, it was at the time, film The War Game, which was about a nuclear attack on Rochester, which they filmed some of it in '65 in Rochester and Whitstable, I think, not Whitstable, Maidstone, sorry, and of course Dover. And my mum was it as an extra during the scenes at the Grand Shaft Barracks in Dover, which was used for to replicate East Berlin and devastated Rochester. The only reason I mention that is that if you look at some of the early scenes where the war is starting to kick off, you actually see an Honest John like this in the background, in a scene of sort of fighting in Germany. You can see sort of a bit of flare at the end, and this thing is supposed to be launched. but it's only a quick little shot. But nonetheless, a bit of trivia for you, and there's nothing wrong with trivia because that's what makes the world an interesting place. Right, not going to get philosophical, or else you will be turning off in your droves. Right, so you've seen that, and here's the missile itself. The rubber tip, as you can see, as I just mentioned. In the battlefield, there would not have been whites like this with checkerboard. You'll find the checkerboard, or the sort of pattern, was used for trials, sort of proofing flights to track stability and how the things was turning and rotating. It's like in New York, the old newsreels of things like the V2 rocket, the German V2 rocket. The early ones have all got black and white on them, but of course that was only really for sort of testing purposes. And in reality, when in operational, these things would have been like a grey or an olive drab, or painted in some colour like that. So, how did it work? Well, on the model, I've got this sort of like, I don't know what it's like, corrosion, I think, over the years. But I mean, this is, this is an early one. This is early 60s. It's not, you expect these things to be in perfect condition, at least not for a tenner anyway. And what you would do you see there's like a spring in there? So you pull back this tab at the bottom. You see there's a tab there? And you would have to, can you see that sliding back? Now that, and if I turn that, like that, I've now primed it for the missile. What I would do then, is I would then turn that, and it would spin around, and bam, it would fire the spring, and then this missile would hopefully fire off the end. I'll give it a go. But it didn't go very well when I was testing this a few minutes earlier. Let's give it a go. Right. Yay! Well done me. I've managed to wipe out 16 T-72 tanks. Next door. Oh, God, this isn't funny, is it, Philip? Don't even try and make funny jokes. It's just not working. It's just not working. Okay, right. So there we are. It came in a number of different boxes over the years. I'll try and show some images of them at the end of this, as I normally do. And hopefully a picture of a real one as well. You can pick these up quite cheaply. I mean, it was such a popular model running for 12 years. eBay's full of them. You can start from about a tenner upwards, really. Go on 70, 80, 90, £100. You want to invest it in mint condition, this box. So it's not rare at all. It's very common. And it's also quite cool. I like it a lot. Yeah. Oh, lastly, I didn't do this, did I? I completely forgot to do this. On the bottom, was that all we got? Oh, yeah, okay, look, made in England, kind of limited. Dinky Super Toys. And how super is that? Right, I'm going now. Goodbye.